thank you for joining me. So I want to talk about the topic of guides. Who are guides? What are guides for? People having loved ones on the other side that are also trying to guide them. Are our loved ones, do they turn into guides? What have you been told by other people? And when somebody else tells you who your guides are, can you trust them, or is there any kind of proof in what they're talking about? Because as I've done this over many, many years, I have learned so much myself, gone through so many experiences myself, and a lot of it was conflicting as well. I don't just listen and believe everything. I try to work it out for myself, and I also try to always connect myself, do my own hypnotherapy, do my own meditation, because if someone else is telling me something, I want to do it myself to see if that information is actually true, not just take their word for it. So I remember years and years ago when I first started doing this, I was in a class and this lady there was telling everybody who their guides were. And at the time she told me that I had a Aztec type Indian, and because I was so young, I was in my 20s, and I was excited that, oh wow, I've got this Aztec Indian sort of from the Incas period guide. I was excited by that. So I believed that because of the level that I was in my understanding, and I was only learning, and I sort of thought that we had to have some kind of guide in our life. As time's gone on and I've seen my own guides through my own meditations, through my own readings, I've started to unravel this a little bit more. So I've never seen in any of the readings that I do, like when I connect to the other side, there is beings that come to help me. They are either connected to me and they are connected to the client. And for many, many, many years, I think it was probably a good 15 to 20 years, every time I sat down to do my ritual to start to connect with somebody's energy to do a reading, this figure came through, and it was a man, and he used to show me himself dressed. Like, he was in a dress, and there was always a white tiger standing next to him. They always came together. And he had one of those hats on that, like you think of Davy Crockett, that kind of American Western-y type. I don't even know what era that was from, but he would come through dressed with fur, like he never had clothes. He had animal fur, he had an animal hat, and he had this tiger with him. And when I knew he was there, it was kind of like, yes, my connection's open and I can start the reading. I never named him. Never once did I feel like I had to give him a name, because at the time I was thinking, but aren't we just energy when we die? Like, we don't have names in the non-physical. Names is just something we do here in physical so that we can identify people. But when we're over there, we know everybody. It's like when I died that time and I'd left my body and that spirit energy came to take me to the room of knowledge. He didn't introduce me as a name. He just walked towards me and I knew him. It was a comforted feeling of knowing him and trusting that I could follow him, but I never needed to name him. And over the whole course of me doing this work, I have never named my guides. I've had other people tell me names for my guides, but personally, I've never wanted to name them. And I often think, the person that is telling me what my guide's name is, what business is that of theirs anyway? And is it they're just coming up with a name? Is it something that they're getting told, and it's not for me at all, it's for them? So yeah, so this man used to come through, and then all of a sudden he left, and he was replaced by a female guide. Now, I don't know that they're actually, are they guides or are they like teachers And as we go through different grades, just like we are in school, when you go into kindergarten, you have a teacher that has the ability to teach that age. The level of your understanding when you're in kindergarten, the mind of a 4-year-old, you have teachers on earth that have the ability to teach that age group. And I believe that the guidance we get from the other side is very much the same, depending on our level of maturity, emotional understanding, consciousness, will depend on what we are attracting as an energy from the other side that is working with us. I don't want to call them, I don't actually feel like my guides tell me what to do or push me in a certain direction. I feel like they work with me as a cooperative, component of what I'm trying to do. They also stand back when they will watch me make mistakes, and they do not step in and stop me because they can see the benefit that is going to teach me. They can't actually make stuff physically happen. Like, let's say I wanted to go on a different career choice. They don't actually make that just magically happen, but what they do is they put a thought into your mind, because we are communicating via thought. Every time I'm thinking, the thinking has a vibrational energy to it. They are picking up that vibrational energy and sending it back to me. So a thought will just come into my mind, and then that thought doesn't go away. It just keeps popping up all the time. And then it pushes me to go and do something about that thought. Or they can put a thought into somebody else on earth who then approaches me and makes an offer to me to go to do this new career choice. So they're not actually doing it for you. They're just putting thoughts out there, and it's still up to us to take action. And I had this discussion the other day, I'm just getting off track a bit, but like with free will, we have free will, and we also have kind of what our soul is destined to learn. So people say, but hang on, if I've got free will, how is that ever going to eventuate? The soul kind of decides that depending on what has happened in the previous lifetime or the one before, and what we didn't learn, maybe in this lifetime, I really need to learn resilience, right? My soul says, let's learn resilience and patience. So my higher self will always put me in situations where I'm needing to be patient and I'm needing to be resilient in what's going on. My free will can go out and just totally ignore that lesson and go and do something spontaneous, make stuff happen. And then that stuff that I make happen actually crumbles and it doesn't stick. And then my ego gets annoyed with myself because I really, really want this and I'm not getting it. And I'm trying to force it and it's all falling apart around me. And in the background is my higher self still sitting there going, well, we're waiting for you to get the lessons of patience and resilience. So as much as I can, my ego free will side of me can force things to happen and I can change things, the higher self is always going to find a way to get the lessons that it needs. In a previous life, if you were somebody that was very, held back from giving love. Like if you had so many walls up that you were so scared to be hurt again and you just weren't going to let love in. In this lifetime, that could be the lesson that the same thing is going to unfold, where you're supposed to learn to just let the walls down and not be afraid. So you'll continually go through relationships that keep hurting you because you're supposed to be learning. It's perfectly okay to be hurt. You can deal with it. It's like a lesson of learning that you're going to be strong enough to get through it. So And then when you just push yourself to just go and experience everything, and don't be so scared and just blocking your life from enjoying it, you get the lesson. So getting back on the track of our guides, they are sort of there watching those. They know the lessons. They know, because our higher self is open. We're not hiding any. There's no secrets with the higher self. When I passed away and I looked at everybody that has died that I had ever known, I knew everything about them. I knew all the lessons that they were supposed to learn, and I knew it's like reading a whole book on each person. But there is no judgment. There's no judgment for anything they did. It's just understanding that that's a journey that you're going on, and I'm going on my own journey. So yeah, having to actually name guides, that's a personal thing. If you want to name them because that makes you feel comfortable, then go right ahead. I don't personally feel like I have to name them. And so what are guides? Like, are they souls that have lived before and they have lived so many times? Are they just teachers that are on different levels? Are they grand masters? So some people will only connect with, they like to use like an Archangel Michael or Archangel Raphael. They'll go straight to an angel type name that they've heard. And in their belief system, they must feel if they are connecting to something that's that high, then they're actually getting some very high wisdom. I've never had those kind of help from the other side. I attract somebody who's on a level that I'm moving into that level. So again, like the teachers, when you're in a kindergarten and you've got a teacher, when you get into grade 7, you have a different teacher. When you get into college, you have a different teacher. When you go to university or you go to higher education, you get a lecturer, somebody who's very learned in their wisdom. And so I feel like as we go through our learning steps, and when I say I get a download, it's because I've moved into another section and I've understood it. Do you remember being at school when you were trying to do a maths class and you just couldn't for the life of you work out how this long division worked, and you just went over it and over it and over it, and then all of a sudden, when you finally worked it out, it was easy. Like when you finally got the grasp of what it was teaching you, it then became easy. I believe we are exactly the same, the way we are learning spiritually when we're on earth. When you finally get a lesson, you just go, now I get it. Now I understand it. And then you move to the next stage, because you continually learn. You never get to a point where you just know it all. So I've noticed that I attract a guide or a teacher from the other side that is taking me to the next level. And when I get that next level, that teacher steps aside and I get a new one. And I always have one at a time. Sometimes people will be told that they have many guides. So I guess that could be like if you were in, let's say you're in school and you were in grade 5 and you were learning English and maths and you're doing some sport lessons and you're also doing music lessons. You have many teachers. You have a teacher that's for music and a teacher that's for sport, and then you have the teacher that's doing your reading and then the teacher that's doing your maths. So if you're learning a lot all at the same time, then I guess you will have different energies that are working with you, trying to teach you many different things. And I feel like I've only ever had one guide at a time, because this is my career. Like, this whole spiritual journey and readings is my career, so it is my one and only focus. I'm not learning I'm not learning to do readings, and I'm not learning to play the piano at the same time, and I'm not learning to join the hockey team at the same time. I'm just doing this. So that's quite possibly why I only have that one specific teacher that's with me. If I was doing lots of different activities and trying to learn lots of different things, I would have lots of different teachers. So I feel like that must be why some people have lots and lots of teachers from the other side, and some only have one or two. It depends on what you're doing on earth. And after my lady teacher guide left, I had a man come in who he was showing me that he had lived in India in his last lifetime, and he was someone who did this kind of work in India. So he was doing forecasts for people. He was a fortune teller, and he seemed to have moved up to a level where he knew he had learnt so much, he was then able to share that information with me to take me to the next level. So he's just sharing with me what he's learnt. He's just passing on the knowledge. And then here I am on earth physically passing on knowledge to you, what they pass on to me, and we pass it on. So we are continually passing on knowledge, and it will depend on the different level of understanding that you're at as to who you will attract, as in who's helping you from the other side. Now, relatives that have passed away obviously can help you. They can't make stuff happen for you, but they can put the ideas into your mind. They can send you emotions to comfort you when you're thinking about them. And as for being actual guides, well, if you felt like your mother that has passed, or your father that has passed, or if you felt like they were amazing teachers to you on earth, if you always felt like you learnt so much from them, there would be that feeling that you feel like you're learning from them still, because you feel like they've gone to some higher, greater place and they know more than you, so you will be reaching out to them. One thing that always fascinates me is when somebody says to me, does my loved one have a message for me? And I often think, did they used to ring you up when they were alive and give you a message? It's kind of a weird question, isn't it? I don't think that's the right way to word it. I don't think we should say, do they have a message for me? Because did your mum used to ring you up and say, look, I've got an instant message for you when she was alive? Probably not. And did you do the same to them? Did you used to ring them up and say, I've got a message for you, I've got this? It's this belief that we have because they've now gone to the other side, that they're all spiritual and holy and they must know more, so they must have messages. I think we should not actually say it like that. I think it should be more, they've got a conversation to have with you because they can see your life unfolding and they understand what you're going through. So they do want to bring you comfort because they just love you. Even if you had difficulties with each other's personalities on earth, the soul just loves. Souls love other souls. There's none of that resentment and anger and hurt and everything like that carries on to a soul. That gets left here with the ego and it dies with the ego, with the body. So when somebody says, has your loved one got a message for me? It's more that they just want to hear from them because they want to be comforted in the facts that they're not alone here on earth, trying to get through earth as a struggle. And it's just that really lovely feeling of knowing that they're there. You know, it's a comfort feeling knowing that they're there. So if they can tell you something that's going to bring you comfort, they will tell you something that will bring you comfort because they know that that is what you want. Because those on the other side are incredibly intuitive. Like, they know what we want to hear. And I see this all the time in readings. Let's say that someone asks me a particular problem as I'm connecting to their energy and I'm connecting to my guides that are like the energies that are working through, there might be energies from their side that are coming through as well. And I can just feel all this information coming through. I can tell what a client is capable of hearing. So they will give information that the client is able to process. They kind of know how our brains work. They're incredible. And they know how we think. So they deliver the message exactly aligned to how we think so that we can process it. If they gave it, it's kind of like, again, if you're being in school, if you're a 5-year-old and you got thrown into a lesson with 35-year-olds, you would have no idea how to process that information. The teacher that is teaching those 35-year-olds can't teach the 5-year-old because they would give information and the 5-year-old be sitting there looking all confused. It's exactly the same with the way the information comes through in readings, because they will give you knowing what you can process. They just deliver it. And I do readings every single day of my life, and the information that comes through with each reading is totally different. One person, it can be so in-depth and really, it's got... Also, what they will do is the guides or the energy that's coming through, information that's coming through, sometimes it's got nothing to do with possessions or getting a new job or getting a new love life or getting a new house. They know that the person who is having the reading really needs to step up spiritually and get to know themselves better. So the information that comes through will be all about them going deeper within themselves and bringing all that up. And then the next reading, someone else, as soon as I start with their energy, it's like they're not ready to go deep. They're just not ready. So they'll get a reading that says, oh yeah, you're going to buy a new house and your property's going to sell. They get a reading based on just what they want, basically, what their level of maturity in their consciousness is wanting to hear. And they're just so different. It just goes from, it's incredible, because I can do one reading that's just talking about, it's just always evolving over someone's got a new partner and they want to know whether that relationship's going to work, and that just readings. And then the next one is all about the person's growth and what do you need in life and what do you need to understand. And it's just on such a different level. And it is kind of like, so what's coming, the non-physical spirits that are coming through for each reading are giving me, as the channel, they're giving me the level that person is on. So I have to put it into words so that they understand it. And that's my talent. My talent is being able to, I don't do every reading exactly the same. If I did every reading exactly the same, I would lose people. I have to be able to interpret what that energy is coming through and write it down so that the person reading it is able to process it. Sometimes when they get a reading and they like, I didn't want to hear that, or they're not happy with what they got, they're right on the precipice of letting go of an old belief and moving into a new belief, and the guides on the other side are just pushing them. They're just pushing them to that next level to say, you can do this, just step up to yourself. Something else that when I was talking all on this subject is believing what other people are telling you. So there's people out there that will tell you who your guides are, and they'll explain what they look like, and if they can prove, it's like when that lady told me that I had an Aztec Indian guide. There was no proof. When I did my own meditation and connected to the guide that I was working with, it was the man that came through with the fur all over his body and the tiger, and he didn't look like an Aztec Indian at all. So at the time I was thinking, was she picking up, was it her guide that she was picking up and she thought it was mine? Or was she just telling me that? Because I was young and naive and believed her. And so we do get people out there, and I will get people that ask me, who are my guides? And I never answer that question. I say, that's for something for you. That's a personal connection between you and the people working with you, and they're going to change. They're not, you do not have the same one unless you don't ever grow. If you stay in kindergarten for the whole of your own life with your mentality and maturity, then you will have that same guide. But if you keep going through the levels and getting different teachers, those on the other side will change as you change. So just telling somebody they have a specific guide, that's kind of wrong, because you're going to have different ones as you go through. So be very careful in what you're believing, and just be open-minded. I think the best way to connect with your guides is to do your own meditation and see them yourself. You see them yourself, you see who you're working with, you know, because it's you seeing it for yourself. You're not just being told and then believing it. And another situation that came about after my mum passed away, my mum, most of you know, had multiple sclerosis, was unable to move from the waist down for the last, 15 years of her life. So most of her days, Dad would put her in a big contraption thing that would lift her out of the bed, and he'd wheel her down to the lounge room and he'd sit her in the recliner. And she spent every day in her recliner because it had a beautiful view out over a lake. And she was stuck in her chair. There was no physical way she could get out of her chair. So she was there in her chair every day. And when we would go to visit, Mum was always in her chair. So it's quite natural that when she passed away in her bedroom, in bed, in that house. But because she spent every single day for 15 years in that chair, her energy, it's like residual energy is left in that chair. So anyone who walked into the home after my mum had passed would feel her energy there, because she was there all the time. And it's like any house. If you're comfortable in your home and you love being there, you leave a residual energy which other people can feel. So Dad found it quite uncomfortable that after Mum had passed, he could still feel her energy there. And it made him uncomfortable because she wasn't alive, but he could still feel her, and he didn't know how to process that. That, like anyone else may have gone, oh, I love the fact that, I can still feel her around me. But he wasn't like that at all. He found it disturbing. So he actually, unbeknownst to me, he'd rung this guy that lived in another town that apparently he'd been on TV, and he was quite a well-known medium. He rang him and asked him to come and move her spirit out of the house. Now, I didn't know Dad had organised this. I found out afterwards. Around the same time, I was also talking to somebody else who lived in another state in Australia who also did kind of medium work. And she was telling me that my mum's spirit was with her, that my mum's spirit was in another state of Australia. And I'm like, okay. And now, for me, I couldn't feel my mum after she passed away. I couldn't feel her energy at all. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, gosh, the poor woman had a disease I was 10 years old when she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She died when she was 73. So all those years, her body was ravished of the physical pain on her body. And I was thinking to myself, well, now that she's passed, I guess she's got to heal. I guess she's got to go back to whoever's going to help her on the other side to recalibrate her energy and, help heal her energy, because she was so sick for so long. So most of her life she was sick. So I was getting conflicting then. I'm thinking Mum is not connecting with anyone living at the moment because she's being healed on the other side. I've got someone telling me that her energy is in her house in Sydney, and I've got another guy telling my dad that he's going to have to tell her to go to the light because she's stuck in her house where they were living. So who was right? Who was right? Well, I suppose we're all right, because that guy who removes spirits totally believes in what he's doing. He believes that he has the power, like a godly power, to move spirits on. And I believed that Mum needed healing before she was able to contact people because she'd been sick for so long. And the woman in Sydney totally believed that she had a spirit sitting in her lounge room that she was connecting with. Because our own level of understanding forms our belief system. And our belief systems can change, because I know mine has changed an awful lot. I mean, I'm 60 now, and I was in my 20s when I started really learning about this and connecting with spirit and doing it. And I would do things in the early days because I learned it from somebody else, or I believed somebody else. Someone told me something and I believed it. And then as time went on, I learned it myself, and I thought, no, that's not right. That was their belief. That's not mine. And I've just changed an awful lot. So if you're on a journey where obviously whatever level you're at and what you're learning, it is right for you, and who's teaching you, it is right for them. And as you go through this, you'll start to, as you learn more and you sort of pass the maths test and you finally get the equation, and then you move to the next stage. When you look back, you'll start to go, hang on, I've got questions around that now, what I was being taught at the time. So that is how it all sort of keeps progressing. I would say if you really want to know who your guides are and who's working with you at the moment, do your own meditation or hypnosis and connect with them yourself, because then you know that it's authentic what you're seeing. Be open to them changing. They don't have to stay the same because you're changing. If somebody tells you something, question them. Question them to get some proof, to get some kind of, if they can't give you any kind of proof at all, then, are they making it up? So, or is it just what they believe? They believe in something so much. It's like the guy that was telling my mum to go to the light. I don't for one moment, after going through my own death experience, I do not for one moment believe that my mother was stuck in that house. Residual energy there, yes. Yes, residual energy, because that was where she sat every single day for 15 years. Was she back home with her relatives on the other side? Absolutely, yes. He was not telling her to go to any kind of light. That was his ego. And he charged my father nearly $250 to do that. If I hadn't known, if my dad didn't tell me, obviously, because he knew, I probably would have stopped him. I think my dad was ripped off. I mean, that's not fair, but anyway, that was a process my dad had to go through. It's funny now because, as time's gone on, my dad sees it very differently now and realises that my mother was not stuck there. That was just his grief in his moment of grief, and he wasn't processing things, logically. His mind was incredibly upset. He'd just lost the woman he'd known since he was 20 years old. And you don't think straight. In times of grief, you don't think straight. So I understand. I understand now why he did that, but I just think it was wrong for that guy to come in and tell my dad a whole heap of bullshit that he moved her on and everything, because he did not. She was already back home. That you all go home. You do not get lost. You do not get stuck here. You can leave residual energy here, but you don't get stuck here. Anyway, so that's my talk on guides. If you have any questions, drop a comment below, and thank you again for listening to me.